Nah. And I still hear his laugh. It wasn't just a laugh. It was a blade sharpened on pride, dragging slow across my skin. My father stood in the middle of the kitchen, one hand on the counter, the other pointing at the acceptance letter I'd been clutching like oxygen. "It's not even on the list," he mocked, his voice thick with disgust. "The Navy? That's what you bring me? After everything I've done to raise you? What a joke." The letter trembled in my hands, but not because I was weak. Because every word from him was a demolition of love, of belonging, of blood. What happens when the one person meant to lift you up becomes the storm that tries to drown you? I remember my throat burning. I wanted to shout, to tell him it was more than a list, more than tradition, more than his hollow expectations. But I didn't. He kept going. Said I'd embarrass the family. Said no man would want me in uniform. Said I'd never survive the training. Each insult carved deeper, until silence became my only shield. That night, I packed my duffel in the dark. My mother peeked through the doorway, but said nothing. Her silence, too, was an answer. The bus station smelled of coffee and oil. The sky was black, heavy, endless. I sat there with my ticket, 17 years old, clutching the only truth I had left. If my own blood refused to see my worth, then I'd carve it into the world myself. And so began the years of saltwater and steel, of push-ups until my arms gave out, of drills that tore muscle from bone, of nights when the ocean swallowed my tears and the horizon whispered, "Prove him wrong." But in that kitchen, when he spat those words, "It's not even on the list," he had no idea what he had ignited. Because one day, I'd walk into a room, wearing white, with stars on my shoulders, and the world would rise for me, even if he never did. The first thing they teach you isn't how to shoot or march or salute. It's how to break. At boot camp, the mornings bled into nights, nights into drills, and drills into something that felt less like living and more like survival. My body screamed, but my father's voice was louder. "You'll never make it." So I kept going. Through the push-ups until my arms locked, through the salt burning my eyes, through the freezing water where they told us, "If you can't swim, you sink." Every face around me blurred into exhaustion, but I saw only him. His smirk. His mockery. That kitchen. That laugh. Some recruits had pictures taped inside their lockers, smiling families, girlfriends, kids. I had nothing but a crumpled bus ticket and a memory of humiliation I replayed like a war drum. "Why are you still here?" one of the girls asked me once, after we collapsed onto the floor, lungs on fire. I wanted to tell her the truth, that I wasn't here to serve a flag, or to make history, or even to be strong. I was here because of him. Because if blood couldn't honor me, then strangers would. Weeks dragged into months. My palms tore open on ropes. My shoulders bruised under rifles. My knees bled on asphalt. Still I rose. And yet, every letter home went unanswered. Every phone call cut short. My mother's voice, when it came, was hollow, rehearsed. "Your father, he just doesn't understand." Understand? He didn't want to. Sometimes at night, when the barracks went quiet, I wondered if she was proud, if she thought of me, or if she was too busy smoothing down the corners of his anger to notice the daughter who had vanished. But the Navy has a way of filling silence. Orders barked. Whistles shrieked. Boots thundered. And slowly I realized I didn't need his applause. Every bead of sweat was my own anthem. Every scar, a stripe he could never erase. By the time graduation loomed, I wasn't just surviving. I was ready. Because while he mocked my dream as not on the list, the Navy was about to write my name in ink no man could tear out. Graduation smelled like gunpowder and rain. Rows of us stood in formation, uniforms pressed so sharp they could cut the sky. The band played, the flags whipped, and the crowd roared for children turned into soldiers. I searched the stands anyway, row by row, face by face. But he wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. My mother sat stiff in the middle, her hands folded tight, her eyes darting anywhere but mine. No wave, no smile, just a woman shackled by a man's shadow. When my name was called, my legs trembled, but not from fear. It was something else, like a pulse of fire rising from the ground up into my chest. I stepped forward, saluted, accepted the insignia pressed into my palm, and the world clapped. Strangers clapped. Officers clapped. My fellow sailors clapped. But the one pair of hands I'd once begged for stayed folded somewhere miles away. That night, metals clinked against beer glasses in the barracks. Laughter filled the air, alive and unbroken. I smiled, but inside, a vow carved itself deeper. One day, I will stand so high he cannot look away. One day, the man who mocked me will choke on the silence of his own regret. Assignments came fast. Deployments faster. Ships, bases, endless seas. I learned to sleep on steel and wake to storms. Learned to give orders with a voice that didn't shake. Learned that respect wasn't given. It was seized, earned, beaten out of the impossible. Years blurred. Rank climbed. My shoulders bore more weight. My chest more ribbons. Each step forward was a nail hammered into the coffin of his doubt. And yet, letters from home dwindled to nothing. Birthdays passed without calls. Holidays with empty mailboxes. It was as if I'd been erased from the family tree. But here's the thing about silence. It can bury you, or it can sharpen you. I chose sharp. Because every absence, every ignored call, every forgotten moment was fuel. Fuel for the day I would walk back, not as the daughter he ridiculed, but as something he never believed possible. And when that day came, I swore. I would not whisper. I would not beg. I would not ask. I would arrive. And the world itself would answer for me. Command is heavier than any weapon. It doesn't rest on your shoulders. It buries them. The first time I stood before a unit of sailors who waited for my orders, the air around me tightened. Dozens of eyes, dozens of lives, all tethered to my voice. I remembered his words again. You'll never survive the training. No man will want you. You'll embarrass the family. And yet here I was, leading men twice my age, women hardened by storms, every one of them saluting me. The Navy doesn't care about your father. The Navy doesn't care about the list. The Navy only cares about the sea, the mission, and whether you can stand when everyone else falls. So I stood. Deployments piled up, South Pacific, Mediterranean, Middle East. My boots hit soil where the air reeked of war and smoke. My voice steadied pilots as jets roared off carriers. My hand signed orders that sent ships into storms. And with each mission, each success, the silence from home grew louder. No letters. No calls. Not even on the day I pinned lieutenant's bars to my collar. But pain is a strange fuel. Every absence twisted tighter into determination. If blood refused to recognize me, then I would build a new family of steel, discipline, and honor. There were nights, quiet nights, when doubt crept in, when exhaustion cracked my ribs and loneliness pressed like weight on my chest. I'd sit in the officers' quarters, staring at the ocean through a round window, asking myself, if he never sees me, if he never acknowledges me, does my victory still count? But then the ocean answered, with waves that didn't care who I was, with storms that tested me without mercy, with horizons that stretched beyond the limits of his small, suffocating vision. And slowly I realized his approval had never been the prize. The real prize was standing unbroken in a world that tried to break me. Still, a part of me held the image. The day I would walk back, not as his daughter begging for love, but as the woman his mockery had forged. The day I would step into a room, and every doubt he had ever spat at me would burn to ash. And I would not need to say a single word. The day I pinned on Commander's bars, the room thundered with applause. The kind that shakes your bones, the kind that tells you, you belong. But even in that roar, my ears searched for a voice that wasn't there. Not my mother's. Not his. By then, years had passed since I'd last seen their faces. Holidays blurred into deployments, birthdays into briefings. My family existed like a ghost I had buried under medals and missions. Until the letter arrived. A simple envelope, tucked on my bunk after a 12-hour shift. No return address. No seal. Just my name, scrawled in a hand I hadn't seen since I was 17. I opened it with fingers that didn't want to tremble. Your cousin's wedding, it read. Family expects you. Don't embarrass us. Wear something respectable. No apology. No warmth. Just command, like I was still a child, not a commander of sailors who trusted me with their lives. I almost laughed. Almost tore it to pieces. But instead, I folded it carefully, slid it into my jacket. Not because I owed them anything, but because fate had just drawn the battlefield I'd been waiting for. Weeks later, leave was granted. My uniform pressed white, my shoes shined mirror bright. I walked into that hall where music blared and chandeliers scattered light across velvet walls. The chatter silenced when I entered. Heads turned. Whispers curled like smoke. And there he was, my father. Older. Grayer. Still sharp in his stance, but dulled in his eyes.
He froze when he saw me.
For the first time, I saw doubt flicker where arrogance once lived. I walked past cousins who had laughed at me, past uncles who had dismissed me, past aunts who had whispered I'd come crawling back. Every step echoed louder than their silence. When I reached the front, I didn't bow. I didn't speak. I simply stood, white uniform blazing under the lights, the rank on my shoulders undeniable. And in that moment, every insult, every dismissal, every not on the list he had thrown at me, collapsed into dust. Because the only thing louder than blood was honor. They called my name like it carried thunder. Commander Elena Reyes, front and center. The hall shifted. Heads turned. Uniforms rustled as officers I had served with, sailors I had bled beside, rose to their feet. 300 Navy SEALs, men carved by storms and fire, snapped into salute. The sound of it cracked the air like lightning. I walked forward, every step deliberate, the medals across my chest catching the light, the stars on my shoulders gleaming. And, in the front row, my father. Eyes wide, jaw set, hands gripping the arms of his chair like the world was collapsing beneath him. He had mocked me once, said my dream wasn't on the list. But here, in this room, his list meant nothing. Because the Navy had written mine in steel. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. Respect doesn't beg. It commands. The commanding officer's voice echoed. Admiral Reyes, front row. Gasps rippled through the hall. Even family who had ignored me, cousins who had smirked at my face, leaned forward, stunned. I took my place, not as his daughter, not as the girl mocked for chasing something beyond blood, but as the Admiral the United States Navy now saluted. Silence followed. Heavy. Absolute. And for the first time in my life, I felt no need to explain myself. No need to beg, no need to prove. The uniform spoke louder than my words ever could. The salute of 300 warriors crushed every insult he had ever spat at me. And all I did was stand tall, letting honor answer where blood had failed. His eyes never left me, not when the applause thundered, not when the sailors' salute cracked through the air like gunfire, not when the commanding officer's voice called me Admiral. He sat frozen, an aging man who once mocked me as a girl too weak, too foolish, too out of line. Now staring at the living contradiction of every word he had ever spoken. I didn't flinch, didn't offer him a smile, a nod, or even the mercy of acknowledgement. I stood as if he were another stranger in the room, because in truth, he was. The man who denied me, who erased me, who measured worth by his own narrow list, was no longer my compass, no longer my anchor. Honor had replaced blood. Around me, officers exchanged handshakes, congratulations, respect that weighed heavier than gold. But in the silence between us, father and daughter, another ceremony took place. His pride fractured, his certainty cracked. His silence begged louder than any apology. For the first time he looked small, and I, the daughter he once belittled, towered without lifting a finger. There's a kind of revenge sharper than words, deeper than rage. It's the kind where you don't strike back at all. You just rise so high that the ones who buried you must tilt their heads until their necks ache just to glimpse you. He swallowed, hands trembling slightly on the chair's edge. But still, I offered nothing. Because this wasn't about proving him wrong anymore. This was about proving myself right. And as I stood there, my uniform blazing white under the lights, the weight of 3 stars resting on my shoulders, I realized I had never needed his love, never needed his list, never needed his permission. The world was already saluting. The ceremony ended, but the echo of it will live longer than any speech. 300 Navy SEALs filed out with boots striking in perfect rhythm, leaving behind silence heavy as the sea. My father remained seated in the front row. He didn't stand, didn't move, just stared at the white uniform that glowed brighter than his pride ever had. I walked past him. No pause, no hesitation, no backward glance. The metals on my chest clinked softly, louder than every insult he had ever thrown my way. For years, I had begged for his approval. For years, I thought his validation was oxygen. But standing there, stars gleaming on my shoulders, the world's respect at my feet, I finally breathed without him. Honor over blood. It was never about being seen by him. It was about becoming someone the world could not ignore. Outside, the salt air filled my lungs. The horizon stretched wide, endless, waiting for me. The ocean had always been my true parent, merciless, vast, but fair. Behind me, I knew he was still there. Small, silent, defeated not by me, but by the weight of his own blindness. I didn't need revenge carved in anger. This was enough. More than enough. Because the day the Navy saluted me, the world wrote my name in history. And my father? He became just a footnote, swallowed in the shadow of what he once tried to erase. I smiled just once at the sea, and walked on.